It's been super windy lately, and my neighborhood has this wonderful invention called giant trees and overhead power lines. When the wind blows, the trees fall onto the lines and the power goes out. That's why I got this massive battery. Okay, try that again. That's why I got this massive battery. Well, not so good at that yet, but anyways, this battery has the ability to power most appliances in my household. And actually, I'm kind of lying to you right now. It's not up there. That was just a little bit of studio magic. It's down there, powering all of my camera equipment, my monitor, my gaming PC, the lights. Here, let me show you. Here you are. Check this out. Ignore my bad cable management back there. Don't comment on my cable management, please. This is the Ecoflow River 2 Pro 700. It's got 716 watt hours of capacity and an 800 watt output over the standard 120 volt port. That means at its current output of 110 watts, I'll get around 6 hours of usable runtime, but of course that'll vary depending on the appliance I have plugged into it. I got this Ecoflow because it was on sale, but it also represents a pretty good balance of price, capacity, and output. But honestly, this is a huge rabbit hole, and you can spend $100 more, $100 more, $100 more, pretty much indefinitely to keep getting more capacity, different features, and a higher wattage output. And really, all I wanted was something to run my gaming computer or my fridge when the power was out for a couple hours. So today, let's take the Ecoflow around my apartment and test it with various appliances to find out what does and doesn't work. That will allow us to determine the duration that we can run each of those appliances for based on their power usage. We'll also chat a little bit about the X-Boost function, which can run heaters up to 1600 watts, but I think it's a little bit misleading marketing. Right there in the item's title, it says X-Boost 1600 watts and 4x800W, which, unless you read the fine print, may mislead some consumers into believing that this battery has a higher wattage output when the reality is it's actually 800 watts total across those 4 ports. Alright, let's start the testing off with my refrigerator. For those of you who don't know what a refrigerator is, this is a marvel of technology and engineering that helps keep perishable food from spoiling by keeping it cold. I don't know how exactly it works, but it's got to be plugged into the wall to run, and that means during a blackout, all of my food could spoil. And food is super expensive. Arguably, that makes it one of the most important devices in my house to run during a power outage, so hopefully it should run for a pretty long time on the Ecoflow battery. The thing with refrigerators is that they're not constantly running and not constantly drawing the same amount of power. They operate on what's called a duty cycle, turning on and off as needed to cool the food. So the math isn't as easy as taking the battery's capacity, multiplying by 0.85 for efficiency loss, and then dividing by the number of watts the fridge pulls. In order to determine the actual amount of time the Ecoflow battery can run this fridge, we have to plug the fridge into it and just let it run. It's also super important to note that this test is for this fridge specifically because every model of fridge has different seals, different efficiency, different power requirements, and also if you open and close the door of the fridge, it's going to need to cool more, so the battery will not last as long. 2.5 hours in and we're at 82% still. Fantastic. So that means we should get in total around, oh god, math, this late at night. Yeah, about 12 hours if I were to just run the fridge on its own, which is pretty damn good in my opinion. Well, anyways, good night. Morning. For me, it's been a little over 12 hours, but for you, it's been seconds. Pretty neat how that works, huh? Let's check the state of the battery now. 27%. Damn, that's pretty good. I bet you it would be a little bit higher if we could turn off that Wi-Fi. Haven't found a way to do that yet. Of course, overnight I never opened the fridge door, but I gotta get in there now for breakfast, so let's do that. Guess I'll see you after the next time skip. Oh my goodness, that took 5 ever. Look how much my beard grew. It's finally done at 16 hours and 45 minutes. That's pretty great, honestly, considering I spent the last 5 minutes opening and closing the door just to get it to die a little bit faster. I even stole some ice and replaced it with water, hoping that that would make the refrigerator run more, which I guess it did. Honestly, I'm impressed. I was expecting 12 hours at most, and to get over 16 is just fantastic. That means during a blackout, I could realistically take this battery to a friend's house, recharge it there, and then plug my fridge back in and let it continue to run and keep my food cool. The next most important thing in my house is my gaming PC, because I also use it for work. We already know from the introduction that the Ecoflow battery can run my gaming PC, but the question is, if I unplug the battery from the wall to simulate power loss, will the PC continue to run? The Ecoflow does advertise UPS capabilities, but it has a 30 millisecond handover time, which may not be enough for some sensitive electronics. So let's try this out. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Well, the computer's still running. That's a good thing. Didn't turn off. No damage. Cool. Since the computer is currently running at 230 watts, that means with this kind of load, it would get around 2.5 hours of runtime from full. Next up, let's test the Ecoflow battery with my electric kettle to make some tea, or as the British call it, tea. As you can see, I have an electric stove, so when the power goes out, I can't just, yeah. The electric kettle is 1500 watts, which is way over the maximum output of this Ecoflow battery. But since this is a resistive heating element to boil the water, it should be just a quick setting change in the app here to get this thing to run without overloading. So I tapped on the gear icon, scroll down, find X Boost, enable that. And now let's see how long it takes to boil 1 liter of water. Ready? Set, go. I tested this from a wall outlet and it took just around 4.5 minutes to boil water. The kettle isn't making any noise at all. And normally once you press the power button, it starts bubbling and hissing from the bottom, but not the case when it's plugged into the Ecoflow. It's almost dead silent. Finally, the kettle is starting to make some noise. I think the way it's getting around this 800 watt restriction is by dropping the voltage. You can see here on our voltage meter, 83 volts. So 1500 watts at 83 volts is about the equivalent of the 800 watts at 120 volts. It took 8 minutes and 42 seconds and 21% of our battery to boil a liter of water. Damn, that's a lot of power. That's the equivalent of like 3.5 hours of running the refrigerator. So I guess having tea during a power outage is pretty expensive when you consider the maximum capacity of this battery, but at least it can do it. Welcome to Cooking on Battery with Dreki. Today we're using a toaster oven to make some frozen chips, or as the British call them, fries. So what you gotta do is go into your freezer and pull out the French fries, pour them onto the baking tray, and then realize you don't have enough French fries to make a single serving, so go all the way to the store. The store doesn't end up having the same kind of fries, so you end up with this mismatch that's gonna cook unevenly. That's the best. The next step is to push them all onto one side because you really want to make sure that the edges get burnt and the inside is nice and soft and soggy. Once that's completed, open your preheated toaster oven and shove them on in. While the oven preheated, the battery was showing about 26 minutes of capacity remaining. However, now that the oven is hot, it stopped drawing power because it has a duty cycle. It turns on and off as needed to keep the heat at a certain temperature. That means with a toaster oven, you should theoretically get over an hour, maybe an hour and a half of cooking time, since it won't always be drawing that 800 watts of power. I had to unplug this thing because it caused a bit of an issue where the Ecoflow battery would not continue supplying power to the toaster oven once it had power cycles, so the heating element had turned off and tried to turn back on. I think that's just due to this thing running at 120 volt and the Ecoflow only being able to run this at 90 volts due to its wattage requirement. But anyways, our chips look just about done there, so let's pull them out and have a taste. Gotta get on the obligatory oven mitt. Look at that. Nice and soggy, just like we like them. The last kitchen gadget I want to try with the Ecoflow battery bank is my blender. And this thing is supposedly 1100 watts, but I haven't been able to get an accurate reading of how much power it uses with that little white device. Turns out that thing is not super reliable. So I'm not sure if this will actually work with the Ecoflow battery. I'll try it with X-Boost on first, see if it trips any protection circuitry, and if it does, then we'll turn X-Boost off and try it again. So let's go. Ready? Here goes nothing. No problem. Sweet. That means I can have my banana and mushroom smoothie when the power's out. Heck yeah. All right, I lied. There's one more kitchen gadget I want to try with the Ecoflow battery, and that is my rice cooker. Let's see how many percentage points it takes to cook a cup and a half of rice. I'm just gonna do the quick rice program, and I guess I'll see you in about 40 minutes. I did double check this thing beforehand, and it's only 500 watts, so it should run just fine on this battery, but 500 watts continuous power is still quite a lot, so I'm expecting to use a pretty significant percent of this battery's capacity. Rice cookering complete, and that took 42% to cook a cup and a half of rice. 42% battery. That's like a whopping 6 fridge hours worth of battery, just for what? This little tiny bit of rice. Oh my goodness. So let's try it out with a couple other things around my house, starting with the microwave. And the answer is, heck no. Apparently I have a unicorn of a microwave because this thing requires 1500 watts. And while the battery pack can provide a peak output of 1600 watts, it can only do that for about a second without overloading. I'd need a battery pack that can provide a constant 1500 watts in order to run this microwave. We already know that this battery can run every single LED light in my house simultaneously, and we know that it can run my gaming PC and monitor. How about my TV? How long can it run that for? There's the extra light. Speaker on. Computer on. Oop, don't Bluetooth for me. There we go. Right, I've been watching it for a little while now, and this setup with the TV, a stereo system, and a mini PC running Windows peaks at about 150 watts of output. So that means with this setup in particular, I'd get over 4 hours of battery life from full. Not too bad. While we're here with the camera and light setup, how about we try and power my biggest fan? I know it'll run this thing, but like anything else, the question is for how long? Maybe it's a hot day and your power's out, so you need something to cool down, or you're going somewhere that doesn't have easy access to power and you want to run a fan. Well, this one on its highest setting takes about 50 watts, and that means over 10 hours of usage from full battery. Speaking of other potentially life-saving cooling devices, how about this giant portable air conditioner? It says on the side that it requires 1.2 amps, but it's got this super duper chunky power cable, so I'm not really sure if it'll work or not. I'm hoping that it'll be similar to the refrigerator in that it requires a high starting current, but once it's running is more efficient. So we're going to start with the fans on low in dehumidifier mode because it's kind of the middle of winter and I don't really need cooling. Then if that works, we'll turn the air conditioning on and see if that makes a difference in terms of the amount of power. The power cable was too thick, so I had to find something to prop up the battery on. Right now it's just running the fan in a low fan mode, and that's only taking 30 watts, so let's go here. Why aren't you letting me? There we go. Now the compressor is running. I'm not sure if you can feel it, but it's blowing super cold air, which is great. This thing is currently pulling 760, 770 watts of power, which is very close to this battery's maximum continuous output. The compressor's been running for about 20 minutes now, which is great, but there's something super important I need to point out about this portable air conditioner. It uses an inverter-based compressor, which means it can adjust the power output higher or lower depending on whether it needs more or less cooling capacity. It's a cold winter day, so I don't know if this thing's running at its maximum output right now. Despite that fact, it's currently running at about 790 to 800 watts, pushing this battery's maximum output. I'm honestly surprised it hasn't overloaded yet. Oh, I just changed modes and it's going to overload, I'm certain of it. How long can it run at this capacity for? $930. Yeah, there you go. I just changed the mode and adjusted some settings to try and increase the power output, which pushed it over 900 watts and overloaded the battery in a couple seconds. So yeah, if running a portable air conditioner is important to you, make sure to get a battery with a higher continuous output. I'd recommend at least 1500 watts. Allegedly, this giant battery can charge off of USB-C, so I've got a 20-watt USB solar panel here, and we're gonna test it out. It's not exactly the brightest day, it's kind of got a little bit of that winter haze, but we'll see if it's bright enough to get this thing going. All right, here goes nothing. We're getting a whopping 5 watts out of this solar panel, 25% of its rated capacity. It's not great, but also it is a winter day, kind of late in the day. Would take literally forever to charge this thing. But you know what, that's cool, at least it'll do it. What if I want to run my leaf blower, but my extension cord is too short? Well, this thing doesn't actually say its power output on it, which is kind of nuts, but I've re-enabled X-Boost and we're gonna try it anyways. Okay, here goes nothing. All right, let's try it one more time. No, thumbs down. It worked the first time, but then it didn't work after that. While we're out here, how about using this thing to charge that thing? The answer, unsurprisingly, is heck no. The electric car requires a minimum of 960 watts at 120 volt to charge. On top of that, this giant battery has 1% the capacity of that car, meaning that at best you'd get 4 kilometers of additional range, draining this thing from full to flat. Really puts into context how big the batteries are in a car, eh? Instead of charging the EV like a dummy, why not charge an electric bike instead? One full charge nets you around 100 kilometers of range versus the EV's 4 kilometers. That's a much better use of your time. We have a problem. That last clip with the leaf blower seems to have busted the Ecoflow battery. Now, it may look like I'm bumbling around like an idiot and I don't know what I'm doing. Some of the time I don't. But I did test the leaf blower with a power meter beforehand to make sure that it didn't take too many watts. So it's a bit of a shame that the AC to DC converter seems to have gone out on this. The AC output is no longer working, and when I plug it into the wall to recharge, it's giving me an overload error. So I guess we get to test Ecoflow's customer service. I do stand by what I've said throughout this video though. These batteries are super cool and every household should have one. It's just a little unfortunate that this one had to break on one of the windier days because it's very likely my power will go out tonight. Whether or not I recommend Ecoflow as a brand, well, that remains to be seen with how the customer service deals with this. I'll follow up in a future video if the experience is positive or negative. In the meantime, you can support me by shopping at my disc golf store, rarediscgolf.com. Like, share, and subscribe. It all helps a ton. Thanks for watching. Hi, hello, me again. Surprise! Just wanted to update you on the Ecoflow support situation. Took about 4 days and 5 emails to get a return label from them, and it was pretty painless. I explained the problem, sent them a quick video, and they're like, yep, cool, you can send it back to us. So yeah, I don't have to make a whole separate video on that. It's pretty good. See ya!